I love the names on this team. They have Sixto Sanchez, and they have my favorite name probably in baseball right now, Jazz Chisholm.
Showing emotion in baseball is terrible and should never be in the game.
It's weird how the dynamic works between sports.
But to win a championship, not only do you need great players on the court, but you need good chemistry, which takes time to develop.
Justin Fields is a all-time talent.
Corey Perry will give some veteran presence to the Canadians.
I feel like Luka will take that next step, and if he can get a three ball consistently around 35%, I feel like they could become a contender.
We can make jokes about you not being in the Super Bowl for 20-something years, but...
What's up, everyone? This is Justin Goldman from the Goalie Guild and Lift the Mask, and you're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Austin and Kevin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NFL Opinions of the Week. This time, we're taking a little look back. Go back to, wow, it's almost 10 years ago. We're going back to the NFL draft. A man who's, we brought this up in 2016. I'm trying to see what your team had, Austin, with the 2016 NFL draft.
Let me see if I can find it.
Trying to look. Actually, they had a nice pick. They were 27, and they drafted Kenny Clark.
Oh, so one of the best defensive tackles in the league.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, 3-time Pro Bowler. He's been good this season again. He doesn't get that many sacks, but as a defensive tackle, that's not really your job necessarily. So unless you're Aaron Donald, but no one's Aaron Donald. But he was a Pro Bowler last year. He's been a 3-time Pro Bowler. He's been one of the best D tackles in the league since he's drafted. So yeah, I think both of our teams hit in the first round of the draft. But that's really the talk. Was Ezekiel Elliott drafted too highly? Was he the right pick per se, or should the Cowboys have stuck with him? And if they redid the draft, would they still take Zeke?
If we're talking about the Cowboys ownership as it is now, yes, they would still take Zeke because they're actually paying him twice this year, so they really love Zeke. And I say no, and I've kind of, if you kind of look, the Lions have changed my opinion a little bit on this. I'm still not a fan of drafting a running back super high, but I understand if you're a team where you have everything else set, and you're just like, let's draft a running back. Kind of what the Lions did with Jahmyr Gibbs. Because everything else was pretty much set, and they're like, we're going to go with a running back.
I mean, they still had some issues with their secondary, and they still have some issues with their interior D line. But I do believe that the Cowboys made the right pick. I just don't see. I mean, he was the reason why they made it so far that year. It wasn't really anything else. I mean, if you look at the stats that season, their leading receiver had 833 yards. Do you want to guess who it was?
Dez was hurt, so I want to say it's Cole Beasley.
Yeah, Dez is really close with 796. And then it's Jason Witten, Terrence Williams. So that's something. But, I mean, if you combine the top two guys, Zeke has more than them. Just running the ball without receiving included, where Zeke also had he had 363 yards receiving, not including receiving. He had more yards than both of those top two guys. And when Zeke was healthy, which is the majority of his first 4 seasons, he did have some injuries in there, but he played the majority of
suspension too.
Yeah. But in those first 4 years, he was easily one of the best players in the league. In those first 4 years, he had 48 rushing plus receiving touchdowns. And in those 4 years, Kevin, 7,024 scrimmage yards. 7,000 in 4 years.
Yeah. He was a great player, and with how they were built, he helped that offense because they were a running team, really helped with Dak. The thing that sticks out to me about this draft is the pick right after Jacksonville. Right after Dallas was Jacksonville, where they took Jalen Ramsey. And it's hard to think about Cowboys needing secondary help, even though they still kind of do, but it's because they had injuries in the secondary. They have Trevon Diggs, you have Deron Bland, Jordan Lewis is a great corner. But at the time of 2016, do you want to take a guess who the corners were for the Cowboys?
Was Heath a safety or a corner?
Heath was a safety. And this is actually the year before Heath. This is when he was backup.
No, he had to have played this year because I remember
He-
this was the year he forced fumbled Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs, and I remember that. So he was on the team. I know he was on the team.
He was on the team, but he was a backup. He wasn't a starter.
I just vividly remember him hitting Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs this year, so I know he had to be on the team. I didn't know if he was a corner or safety though.
No, he's a safety.
Let me take some other stabs at it. I think you guys had Carr, right?
Yep, Brandon Carr. It's good.
Okay. Was Orlando Scandrick still on the team?
Oh, that's a good one. It's not showing Orlando Scandrick, but he had to be. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is showing Orlando Scandrick. Yes. It has him listed as DB. Brandon Carr was the left corner, and then DB was Scandrick because Scandrick played in the slot.
Okay, I'm trying to think of anyone else. I think that's all I got.
Okay.
I remember Scandrick because he played at Boise State and was on that really, really good Boise State team. I remember Carr, and obviously I remember Heath because he blew up. Wait. Was Wilcox there?
JJ Wilcox, I want to say, was a backup as well. He was not a starter. But yeah, it was Wilcox. Jeff Heath was on the roster. And then I'm trying to find Wilcox. He had to be on this team. Yeah. It has JJ Wilcox on the roster. So yeah, you're correct.
Got it. I can't name anyone else.
Okay. So this is actually a big thing because this was, I want to say, the 2012 year. No, had to be the 2011. No. I'm going with 2012 because the Cowboys signed Brandon Carr to a ridiculous deal. This is when they actually paid in free agency and didn't wait till the end. They also drafted this guy at number 4, Morris Claiborne.
Oh, that's right. I remember. Yeah, I remember him. I remember Brandon Carr because he was a starter forever. He was literally a starter on a lot of different teams. I remember him being on Dallas for a while.
Yeah. And he was not playing corner, but he was a great corner once they moved him to corner. Byron Jones was the free safety for this team. So
yeah, I was thinking Byron Jones, but I didn't know if he was a corner or not.
Yeah, no, he was not a corner. I was wondering if you were going to guess that, but no, this one he was a free safety. But here's the thing. Imagine, they were all okay corners. And to me, they could have gone different ways as well because their defensive line was Tyrone Crawford. They also, it's not listing DeMarcus Lawrence because I know DeMarcus Lawrence was in this draft, or not. He was playing because he was in the 2014 draft. So maybe not having him as a starter, but their starters on the defensive line were Tyrone Crawford, Terrell McClain, Malik Collins, and Jack Crawford.
Was Randy Gregory not on this team?
No. No. He
was on the team?
Randy Gregory had to be, yeah. Because I know he was a second round pick, but he must have been in 2015. So yeah, he had to be on this team. Yep, he was in the 2015 NFL draft. So okay. Yeah, Randy Gregory was on this team, but not established. Their linebackers are also Anthony Hitchens, who wasn't bad, and then Sean Lee, who was always dealing with injury. But when he was on the field, amazing. And if you look at this, I won't talk about Kenny Clark.
I thought Sean Lee was healthy this year.
Sean Lee was healthy, but I don't think he played.
Oh, I looked it up. He was a first-team All-Pro.
Huh.
He only missed one game all season.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was 5th in Defensive Player of the Year vote.
Interesting. Okay, so when he was finally healthy. So to me, they had holes on defense, and I'm not going to bring up Chris Jones, who I'm surprised was in the 2016 draft. He was a second-round pick. I'm not going to bring that up because that's very look at what he is now. But if you look at the picks following, Jalen Ramsey, DeForest Buckner, and then I guess Leonard Floyd, who's okay, but he was drafted number 9. But to me, what sticks out is DeForest Buckner and Jalen Ramsey, and they're solid. They're great players.
But there's also
to me-
guys right here like Eli Apple at 10, right? So there was no guarantee that you're going to get a guy, or Vernon Hargraves. Like, those guys didn't stick around for all that long. I guess Eli Apple is still in the league, but there's been conversations regarding how necessarily that's going to work itself out. I think he's on the Chargers right now. But DeForest Buckner, he's the same amount of Pro Bowls and all pros as Zeke. I think the big problem, I think why you and other Cowboys fans get confused when this question arises, is that it was the mistake to give him the extension. That was the mistake. I don't think drafting him at 4 was the mistake. He was the best running back in the league for the first 4 years of his career.
I'll go first 2, because when did Derrick Henry start to emerge in the 3rd season? Right. Because Derrick Henry took some time.
Even in 2018, Derrick Henry only has 1,059 yards and 12 touchdowns.
Sorry.
And so, Zeke had more yards than him. Yeah, first 3 years by a lot.
First 3.
Let me check Henry for his force or for 2019.
Because you bring up a good point in same Pro Bowls as DeForest Buckner, but to me, DeForest Buckner still has value now. Zeke really doesn't have value as a top
but if you compare their value, DeForest Buckner is never been as good as Zeke.
True.
Zeke was getting MVP votes, and he should have gotten MVP votes. That's how good he was, right? DeForest Buckner is not getting many Defensive Player of the Year votes.
Yeah, but I would argue defensive tackle is still an issue for the Cowboys. Mozzie is looking like a bust. They need help at defensive tackle. So it would have solved for a defensive line that struggled and just kind of really put in the work. They were an okay defensive line, but to me, you could have upgraded your defense where they still had capable running. Darren McFadden had 1,000 yards the year prior.
Looking at yards per scrimmage, Derrick Henry and Zeke were very, very similar in 2019. I think if you argue that Zeke was better, it'd be a fair argument. I think Derrick Henry had like 200 more 200 more rushing yards and like on the season 2 more touchdowns. But Zeke also had 420 receiving yards, while Derrick Henry was not even remotely close to that. So, I mean, rushing plus receiving, they basically have the same yards per scrimmage, and Derrick Henry has 2 more touchdowns. So if you wanted to argue, I think you could say that Zeke was better.
Yeah, you can argue that. And it's just, to me, the longevity. And the thing that sticks out to me is Jalen Ramsey.
I think longevity is overrated when a player is MVP level.
Okay.
Let's talk about this in NBA terms. If you were drafting a player, would you be okay drafting LeBron if he could only play 5 years? Right, and then would fall off a cliff into becoming just a average to below average player the rest of his career? Would you draft LeBron? But this is not rookie year LeBron. This is prime LeBron for 5 years, because that's what Zeke was. Zeke came into the league and was an MVP candidate. Correct?
Yes.
So would you take the first 5 years of LeBron, but 5 years of LeBron at Heat/Cavs when they beat the Warriors level for 5 years, and then he becomes a below average player after that? I say yes. There's not many LeBrons in the league, right? So even if it is only 5 years, that's only the rookie contract. So you're not paying him all that much. And even if it is the first overall pick, I think that's a reasonable pick, because you can win a title in that time period. What failed the Cowboys was their building around Zeke. It wasn't Zeke until they signed him to the extension.
That's fair. But they had problems on defense.
Can you answer the question though? Can you answer the LeBron?
Yeah, I think I would take that too. I would take an MVP.
Yeah, a 5 year prime LeBron, and then he falls off a cliff. You would still take him at a top 5 pick.
Yeah. My thing sticks out to me is he was a better running back, but than Darren McFadden. To me, they had other problems which they could have fixed with the defense. what a fix with Jalen Ramsey. Because how many Pro Bowls did Zeke have? I don't have his page listed up. You mentioned
he has 3, which is the same as DeForest Buckner.
okay, because you have 3 right now with in Jalen Ramsey in the first 4 years.
But the reason why Zeke had 3 is because he only played 10 games in 2017, but still in 2017, he had 983 yards in 10 games. That's 98.3 per game. And the thing about Zeke is he's also really a receiver. He had, in his first 4 years, he had 1,600 yards receiving. He had 2 years where he had 1 year where he had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. In his rookie year, he was 6 yards away from it. Or 2,000 yards from scrimmage. The amount of players doing that is very few.
Yeah. To me, there's also, you do have the help of the offensive line, but he still was incredible because he had that breakout speed. He just had so many runs. His rookie year, Pittsburgh, that screen pass, which goes to your point about being a pass catcher as well. But the Cowboys could have had a lockdown corner with Jalen Ramsey. He was a part of a 2017 Jacksonville Jaguars defense that was amazing. And the Cowboys struggled defensively because you can talk about
they had the best rushing defense in the NFL.
Well, yeah, but
think
about passing defense.
Well, they allowed the 17th most. No, whatever the opposite is. They were 17th in the league in. So they're basically average in yards, right? While having the best rushing, that makes you a top 10 defense, right? So I don't think defense is as much of an issue as you're making it seem to be. I think that do you know, let me ask you this question. How many 2,000 yards from scrimmage seasons does Derrick Henry have? From scrimmage, this includes receiving and rushing. How many does he have?
I want to guess he has 2.
He has 1. And it was the year he rushed for 2,000 yards. Zeke has 1, and also has 1 where he was 6 yards away from it. It didn't play in the last game of the season that year because they were already so far into the 1 seed that he didn't play the last game. So, I mean, that would have been the yards right there. He averaged 108.7 yards per game, and he wouldn't have reached 2,000 yards rushing. But when you add the 363 yards receiving, it's basically 2,000 yards. You can't get much better than Zeke his first 4 years. It's almost impossible. The first 4 years of Zeke that's top 10 for a running back ever. When you compare other running backs to their first 4 seasons. It may be first. I don't know how many guys have started their career that hot.
But it fell off quickly, but we are looking at the 4 years of rookie. To me, the Cowboys defense always had problems, and they just made up for it because they controlled the clock, which was because of Zeke. But to me, that really got pointed out in the playoffs because you think about 2016, their pass defense, they could not pressure Rodgers, which is always tough. But you also, how many yards? I'm not gonna say their pass catching would have been better on the final catch because it was a tight end, so Ramsey wouldn't have been there. But they missed the playoffs in 2017.
Do you know how many yards Zeke had in the playoff game against the Packers?
Probably like 120.
Very close, 125. Zeke wasn't the problem. And how many guys do you know that rushed for 125 yards in their first playoff game?
Then what was the problem?
Well, I think that here's my point. If you had Darren McFadden or whoever the backup was, I don't think you're getting 125 yards on the ground. And in that case, you're not scoring as many points. You're not sticking with them points-wise. The Cowboys scored 31 points in this game.
But the Cowboys also were down, wasn't it like 28-0?
They were not down 28-0. They were down 21-3.
21-3. Okay.
But by halftime, it was 21-13.
So defense was a problem.
I mean, their defense forced a turnover. Jeff Heath caught a touchdown and also destroyed. I guess there wasn't a forced fumble on that one, but I do remember the hit that Jeff Heath had. I think it was more. Look, the problem, the Ty Montgomery was the running back for the not the Cowboys, for the Packers, and he only rushed for 47 yards. They also had Aaron Ripkowski, who I believe was a fullback. Yeah, he was. He had 24 yards rushing. The Cowboys far outrushed them. I don't think that's the case. I don't think they score 31 points without Zeke contributing as much as he did. I think if Jalen Ramsey stops a touchdown, here's the problem. So Jared Cook had 6 receptions for 103 yards and a touchdown. If you're saying that Jalen Ramsey does not affect that, well, then he still gets 6 receptions for 103 yards and a touchdown, right? The other touchdown pass that Aaron Rodgers had in this game was to Richard Rodgers. You know what position he was? A tight end. The only other 2 touchdowns that were scored by the Packers in this game were by Tom Montgomery, the running back. So there was no touchdown that would have been saved, right? The longest pass that was completed was 35 yards to Jared Cook and 34 yards to Richard Rodgers. After that, it was a 32-yard completion to Devontae Adams, who had 76 yards this game. But that's less than Dez, who had 132. It's about the same as Terrence Williams, who had 68. So I don't think it was being able to guard wide receivers was the major problem here. And if you're talking about sacks, the Cowboys had 3 sacks in this game. That's a fair amount, right? I would say 3 sacks is a good number.
It is fair. But they just couldn't get enough. You had to put a lot of pressure on
They had more
Rodgers,
sacks than the Packers had. The Packers only had 2.
Because the Cowboys had a great offensive line. Those were prime offensive.
Okay, but do you see my point? It wasn't rushing the passer, in my opinion. It was they had 3 sacks, which is more than the Packers, so they did more than enough there. And the yardage to receivers wasn't really there. Devontae had 76, Randall Cobb had 62, and Geronimo Allison had 46. That is the extent of receiving yards by receivers. While the Cowboys had 132 by Dez, 68 by Terrence Williams, and 45 by Cole Beasley.
To me, the problem with this Cowboys team was their defense. They couldn't get stops when they needed to. And they didn't. It was really a defense that did just enough. It did bend, don't break. And you're talking about they bent a lot, but they didn't really break. To me, Jalen Ramsey would have elevated.
I don't know. What does he do in this game? What does he change?
I think he probably gets a turnover.
The Cowboys had a pick in this game with Jeff Heath.
Yeah,
I don't know
they
if
could have gotten more with Jalen Ramsey.
You think prime Aaron Rodgers throws 2 picks in a playoff game? That's really the question we're asking. I don't think so, personally. But, I mean, maybe he could have. I think I don't know if a rookie Jalen Ramsey is picking off prime Aaron Rodgers in a playoff game. I don't know. I think that's more of an if than the fact that we see that Zeke had 125 yards in this game.
It looks like, if I'm understanding, it looks like, I know Jalen Ramsey was second in defensive rookie of the year, but he also had, I believe, trying to see, there's an AP by his rookie name, so I don't know if that means he got
That's
an
AP
All-Pro.
Defensive Rookie of the Year vote.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. Because this next year he was an All-Pro.
Yeah, but he was a second in defensive player. Well, you can see by the AV, Kevin, his AV approximate value is about half of it was the next season. So he was good. He was solid, but he wasn't all-pro level. All-pro levels, if you see all 3 of his all-pro seasons, it's usually around 14 to 15, and that year, his rookie year was 8. If you want to compare that to Zeke, for example, his rookie year, his approximate value was 16, which is higher than any season that Ramsey's ever had. And once you get towards the top, it does like taper off. Like it's really hard to get into the 20s unless you're a QB. But again, Zeke had double the approximate value his rookie year than Jalen Ramsey.
So he did play well his first 4 years, and the big problem is the second contract. But we're not
Yeah, yeah.
getting into
What?
that.
Yeah, that's where I think the problem happened. Don't sign
Okay.
him to that contract. It was going to be too much. But
Yeah.
I do think I still believe they made the right choice. I don't think that they're as good of an offense, and I don't think their defense has improved enough for them to be much better. Not just 2016, but through those first 4 years.
I think their defense would have been improved with Jalen Ramsey in those first 4 years because Brandon Carr was okay, Morris Claiborne was okay. They would have had a solid and then developing to a great corner those first 4 years with Jalen Ramsey. They also could have gone defensive line. We've seen like what the defense does with Trayvon, and Trayvon's more of in the early years was more picking guys instead of being a solid corner. We saw what that did to the defense. Because I don't want to compare Ramsey to Parsons and what Parsons did to the Cowboy defense because Parsons is on another level and he rushes the passer. So to me, the big pick is Ramsey, and they could have gone running back in the second round. They would miss out on Jalen Smith, but they cut him, I believe, in the first 5 years. So they could have gone with Derrick Henry for a running back. They also could have gone later in the running back or just stick with Darren McFadden.
But here's the thing. If you're going to bring up like Derrick Henry, you don't know whether Derrick Henry or Zeke is going to be the guy who has a long-term career, right? Zeke was better through his first 4 years than Derrick Henry, and it's not remotely close. If we're talking about the entirety of the 4 years, the only year it's close is that fourth year, and I still think you could give it to Zeke.
Yeah, to me, there is a drop off between the first 4 years. I won't go longevity because you can't really know that. But to me, it would have just been here's a young running back, and he still was a good running back. It wasn't as great as Zeke, but to me, that is worth it given what you would get with Jalen Ramsey on the defensive end. But it really comes down to what do you value and what do the Cowboys value at that moment, and they valued more about offense than building a defense.
I think later in the draft they could have drafted better around Zeke and built around Zeke better. I do think that was more of a problem than the other. If you could again guarantee yourself to have the best running back in the league, I don't know what team takes that for a rookie deal. I don't know of any team that would.
How else could they have built better around Zeke? Would it just be defensively? Because their 2016 draft was pretty good.
Yeah, it would have had to have been defensively around Zeke. But if you tell the Cowboys, the only thing the Cowboys would change if they would go back is not giving him that extension. I think almost every team, if they were in the Cowboy situation, I'm talking if it wasn't Jerry Jones and it was another group of people, I still think that group takes Zeke and just says, hey, let's not give him the extension. That's what happens because it was magical what Zeke did his first 4 seasons with the Cowboys.
I think GMs go Jalen Ramsey. But yeah. So I think we've let us know your thoughts.
I don't think one corner can impact the game enough like one running back who's the best running back in the league can. If your defense is bad and you have one really, 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 really good corner, it's not going to fix it. They just won't throw to the one corner. They'll just throw around the one corner. What makes the Broncos so good with Surtain is that they have 3 good corners. If you got Ramsey, would have to build around him in the secondary for your secondary to actually improve.
Which they did in the later rounds because they got Anthony Brown, who was a solid corner. To me, it would have elevated that secondary, which to me over those 4 years struggled, especially with that defense.
Does it make enough of a difference? I don't think so. Jacksonville had such a good defense and still didn't get over the hump. They had everything in defense. Every position on their defense was amazing and still couldn't get over the hump. What makes you think the Cowboys would have if they didn't have a great offensive talent? Dez fell off a cliff immediately. Dak really did need running help to move the ball down the field his first couple seasons. I don't think they're any better of a team if they add Ramsey.
I think they're better because they did they would still have a solid running game. Would it be the best? No, but it would still get things done and it would still help Dak. And at this point, they're thinking Romo, so we're veteran. The only thing is they got lucky with Dak and him performing well because of Romo's injury. So, yeah, to me, it's not always going to be the right pick because of Jalen Ramsey being right there. You could also go DeForest Buckner. It would get really interesting if Joey Bosa was also on the board, but he was taken with the pick above. So, but yeah, that's
But that
pretty much.
the 2017 Jaguars also had a 1,000-yard rusher with 9 touchdowns in Leonard Fournette and still weren't able to get it done.
But they
I
also
just don't-
didn't have a good quarterback.
Bortles wasn't bad that season.
Was he average?
He had 21 touchdowns and 13 picks. That's not bad. He had 3,700 yards, 60% completion percentage. That's not bad. I think that's as good as Dak was his rookie season. If he didn't have Zeke as a running back. Dak was 22-4, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he didn't turn over the ball as much.
But that's because he didn't throw the ball as much.
Okay, so how many times did Blake Bortles throw the ball?
Let me see. He threw 523 times. Dak threw 459 times.
Okay.
So
So he
70,
did throw less.
70 times less.
To me, there's a lot more factors between comparing Dak, the quarterback situation, with the run game versus the defense, and just kind of talking about, well, because
Dak
he
also had. What were you saying?
Dak also had a better receiving core than the Jaguars, because Jaguars was Julius Thomas still their tight end.
No, it was Mercedes Lewis. They had Keelan Cole, who had 748 yards, and then Marquise Lee, who also had over 700 yards. Then it was Alan Hearns, who had 484, but he was hurt. He only played 10 games. Then D.D. Westbrook, who only played 7 games. In the playoffs, in the playoffs against the Patriots, Blake Bortles threw for 293 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. I don't know how much better Dak would have played.
Well,
If you go against the Steelers, Blake Bortles, again, no picks. He threw 1 touchdown, no picks.
so they advanced to the second round.
They made it to the AFC Championship.
In 2016? I thought it was 2017.
2017. I'm talking about 2017.
Okay.
Because that's when 2016 would not have been good enough at all, because that's when Jalen Ramsey wasn't a great corner. He was solid, but if you take away Zeke from the team and add a okay corner, I don't think the team improves. But the next year when he's really good, I think they could have improved.
Yeah, when they missed the playoffs. Yeah.
In 2016, Jalen Ramsey's rookie year, they only won 3 games. So, no, they were not good.
Okay, you're talking about 2017. Well, yeah, they advanced to the playoffs. Blake Bortles just did just enough and really relied on that defense. And to me, that defense would have just benefited from having Jalen Ramsey.
Isn't Dak's entire playoff career about doing just enough when they win and not enough when they lose?
I think he had a lot of yardage against the Bucks. I think his whole career is just the interceptions lately. Because he pretty sure threw an interception against the Niners in the divisional round game when they could have taken the lead. And then there was the wild card game. Wild card game was play calling. But yeah. So I think those might be stories for another time. But I'm gonna stick with no. You did make some solid points, but I'm just always gonna think about Jalen Ramsey in that pick.
I don't know if Jalen Ramsey is still a Cowboy at this point in his career. He's moved around a lot, and I think that multiple seasons of the Cowboys being mid and missing the playoffs, I think that sours on him. I mean, he was out of Jacksonville in 2019.
But
he only played 3.5 years there.
So talking about longevity, bringing up that conversation, I think the Cowboys make it work. They figure something out and they pay him a lot of money. I think Jacksonville didn't want to pay him, and they were also just really bad. I don't think the Cowboys are that bad. They're just okay, which I think could have been better under Ramsey, but that's putting in a lot of factors if we're talking about does he stay with the Cowboys? Because Zeke held out his third year. So he was kind of wanting to be traded, and he
But
was
if we're
holding out
talking
for a
about like
contract.
2019, the Cowboys missed the playoffs at 8-8, and that's with Zeke having an utterly amazing season. And I don't think a rookie year Tony Pollard is really going to fix that team that much.
Well, they could have gone differently in running backs the following years. They also, to me, the problem was their defense in 2019. Then, especially in 2020. 2020, that was the worst defense to sit in a lot of statistics. So, and they didn't have a corner. That was before Trevon Diggs in 2019. Brandon Carr, I think, was
I don't
gone.
understand how this team didn't make it further. The 2019 team, I don't know how did they finish 8-8.
I would say coaching.
They have the fifth best rushing attack and the second best passing attack by yards.
What was their defense?
But their defense was 10th and 11th.
What were
by
they in
yards.
turnovers?
Turnovers, they were 9th. They didn't get a lot of turnovers, but they also didn't turn the ball over that much. They have they turned over the ball 18 times and forced 17 turnovers. So they only had a turnover difference of -1, which should not be enough for you to lose that many games.
Who were their corners? I know Anthony Brown. I'm trying to think.
Awuzie.
Oh yeah, Woozier. He wasn't bad, but he
No,
also
this was
didn't get
his
turnovers.
this was his best year of his career by approximate value.
Oh yeah, this is okay. So they had a Woozier and then
Byron
I'm
Jones.
sure Byron Jones.
This was his Pro Bowl, or no, this is the year after his Pro Bowl year, I
Yeah.
think. Then they had Jordan Lewis. Trying to see who else started.
But yeah, Byron Jones didn't get a lot of picks. It looks like Chidobe Awuzie got 1 interception. To me, you have gotten more with that with Jalen Ramsey.
I don't know if picks are all that important when your turnover difference is only -1.
But it would have given them more chances for a great offense. That's kind of my
Their
whole thing
offense
with
was
picks.
great.
But you just give them more possessions. That's what I'm saying. You stop the team, you give more possessions to your offense that is great.
But you can't. Your offense wouldn't be as great if you did make that change, right? You just get more picks and have a more mediocre offense.
I think their offense still would have been great with
I think it would have been
running
very
back.
good instead of great. There's no way you can guarantee. Again, if you're going about yards from scrimmage, Zeke had 1,800 with 14 touchdowns.
I think
That's not something you can easily replicate.
you can get a guy. How many yards did Derrick Henry have that year? Was it 1,500? 1,400?
Well, this was the first year. It was 1,500. This rushing
Okay.
yards, yeah. But again, that was the first year he actually started to play like Derrick Henry that we know.
Yeah.
He had less yards from scrimmage and more touchdowns.
1,500 to me is you're giving up 300 yards, but that's a reasonable difference that I'm willing to live with. So, and they could have gotten running backs in different ways when it's harder to get a lockdown corner like Jalen Ramsey was at that time. So that's my
Is
big
it because
thing.
the Cowboys have already gotten one since then?
Well, people didn't like Trevon Diggs to start.
I didn't
think
because he only went for picks, but he's been a much better corner.
He is a much better corner. But if we're talking about you have the chance to get Jalen Ramsey, they could have done it. That's my whole thing with it. But yeah, I think that's all I got. Any final thoughts?
We can end it there.
Because I think you presented a lot of good points. Feel like I presented some good points. You did bring up good questions, and I think now it's up to the listener to let us know, who do you agree with more? Do you have another reason? We appreciate you listening to Outsiders' Opinions.